Hi, everyone. Happy Thursday. I'm Tirza Hollenhorst, and I am delighted to be here with my co-founder, Philip Horvath. We are LUMAN. We're an innovation training and development company, and Philip is going to share with us today a new approach that we're really excited about. We're really in the process of learning about ourselves, of how we think about moving from self-care to self-cultivation, and how to create yourself and program your own cultural operating system. So Philip's going to present to us, and then we'll follow up with a conversation. Over to you, Philip.
Awesome. Thank you so much and welcome, and thanks for joining us tonight. And self-care is such an important topic because I think we can all use more of it. So I'm going to start there and really think about where we start in general is with mindset, right? We always think that mindset affects behaviors, behaviors affect outcomes. So if I want to create different outcomes, I need different behaviors, which starts with a different mindset. And the foundation for the mindset that we use at LUMAN is really the idea that first it's about awareness, right? What am I paying attention to? What am I looking at? What data am I collecting? Right? What am I really taking in? And then from that to say, what am I taking responsibility for? Right? If I'm aware of these things, I'm being invited most of the time to do something about them. If it's my stuff to do, it might not be my thing to do. But then I have my responsibilities. And ultimately, if I consistently am taking responsibility, I'm more and more ownership of my own life, of my relationships, of the world around me. So based on that, if you kind of look at that, on a basic level, we have this human operating system, right, of how we function, right, and what we have available to us. And don't get too excited about the fact that there's some chakras here. It's just a really good map. And as Count Korzybski said, the map is not the territory. So it's just a good map and actually relates to many of the other maps that are out there in different systems around the world, which have all been looking at what does it mean to be human? Right? And they say we have a body with which you can sense, we have emotions with which we can feel, we have a mind with which we can think, and we also have relationships in which we make choices around agreements and around connections with other people. And then, of course, at the sort of our existential part, right, that is in this world. And then there's this part that wants to come in this world, a creative part. It starts with our voice, right? Each of us has a unique voice. And I'm not just talking about the voice I'm speaking with right now to you, but really our unique individual expression, right? Who you are, the unique you that nobody's ever been before. And then we have our capacity for vision, right, where we can imagine things and we can imagine a future or positive and negative futures. And we have this sense of calling where we have kind of the invitation to create here, right, to do something here, to really make our life meaningful. And that's sort of our creative part, right? And if you think about self-care, as a very first step is to acknowledge that I have this operating system. And with it comes that we have needs. Right? We have human needs. On a physical level, I have physiological needs, survival needs. Right? I need food, I need water, I need sleep, I even need touch, which is an interesting challenge at the moment. Right? But we have these very basic needs. And then we have emotional needs, we have safety needs. We want to feel like we're okay and we're going to be okay tomorrow too. Right? We have that need for safety. And on the mental level, we have a need for self-esteem. Right? We want to feel good about ourselves. We want to feel like, hey, I'm being in the world and I'm actually contributing here and I'm feeling good about who I am. And then there's social needs, of course, because we're not alone. Right? We have other people, so we have this need to also be connected to groups of people that we can relate to. And finally, we're in the voice level, we have this need for self-actualization. And those of you who study the psychology probably recognize Maslow's needs here that he identified. Right? And he actually added one more towards the end because he realized that self-actualization is still a bit of an ego show. Right? It's still about me, doing my thing. And he said that when you really mature a little bit more, you go into transcendence. Right? You actually transcend that because you're asking yourself, what am I putting this in service to? Right? Something bigger than myself. And finally, there's also this need for meaning. Right? We have to feel like we're actually here, we're doing it, we're doing our life, and it has some meaning for us. So the very first step is actually self-care. Sorry, the very first step is actually self-care, right? Which is to really acknowledge that you have these needs, right? And to begin to address them, right? Because if we're not being met, it's going to have all kinds of negative responses, right? So to take care of your physiological needs, to drink enough water, to eat good food, to exercise your body, right? To create emotional safety, create places where you can feel good, right? To create ways of fulfilling your self-esteem and your social needs and your self-expression needs, right? All these different needs are there. And the first part is to understand that we have strategies in place for the most part to fulfill these needs, but they might not be the best strategies, right? Like, for example, when I relax, I like to drink a beer. But drinking 10 beers might not be a good idea, right? There might be better ways to relax than to drink 10 beers, right? So there's learning in terms of self-care of actually just taking care of your system. Right? This next level up is actually self-regulation. I was about to jump because I'm so excited about it. But in self-regulation is when you realize that you can actually move towards a vision, right? I can actually move towards something that I would want, but in order to do that, I have to adopt new good habits and let go of habits that don't serve me any longer. Right? We're all habitual creatures, right? And that's actually a good thing because 90% of what you do every day is habits. And if you didn't have those habits, you'd have to learn how to brush your teeth every morning. Kind of hard, right? So it's kind of a good thing that you have habits. But in self-regulation, you're beginning to see if they're actually serving you and moving you in the direction that you want to move in, right? And so beginning to learn how to create habits. Right? And there's a bit of it, if you think about the habitual creature, there's this wonderful book by Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow, and he talks about system 1 and system 2, right, where sort of our bottom circuitry, our physical and emotional circuits are running the show most of the time, right? It's sort of that elephant. And on top you have that rider trying to direct the elephant sort of in the direction you want, right? And if you want to change habits, that is like directing that elephant to go where you want it to go. And it's really, if you think about habits, right, there's some basic elements to a habit. There's a cue, right, some trigger in the outside world, right? Then that triggers a craving, and then there's a reaction, and ultimately a reward, right? So, for example, you might, see something and you're like, oh, I think I'm thirsty. And then now you're thirsty, and you drink a glass of water, and the reward is that you're not thirsty anymore. Good thing to do. Drink lots of water, hydrate to create. We like to say it, LUMAN here, right? But the whole key is that you understand that this is always going on all day long, right? All day long you have cues. This is what marketing uses, right? They show you pictures, and suddenly there's this craving that you didn't even know you had, right? And you go out and fulfill that craving by buying some product, and so that you feel reward, but most of the time that's actually a very short-lived pleasure. So the key is to understand that these things are constantly happening to you all day long. And if you want to change habits, the best way is to begin to focus on some key habits, right? The habits that change everything else. If I change this one thing, like for example, if I'm beginning to drink more water or decide to eat more healthy food, that'll have effects on all kinds of other habits that I also have, right? So like the key is to focus what gives you the most leverage, right? If you want to change habits, look at a habit that really helps you change a lot. Another thing is to use habit stacking, right? Because we all have full days, right? And we have tons of stuff going on already anyway. So how can you use time that you're already spending, like especially mornings and evenings are really good ones, right? Or even lunch, but those like typical things that you do anyway. Like for example, if you wanted to institute a gratitude ritual, or if you wanted to institute some affirmations, you can do that while you're brushing your teeth, right? Because you're spending those 2 minutes anyway. So you might as well spend them doing something new. So that connecting that habit to something that you're doing anyway is going to make it easier to adopt a new good habit. So integrate that new self by connecting it to things that you're already doing. The third thing is to make sure you're consistent, right? Consistency is key in habit building. And repetition actually ingrains, it builds these grooves in your brain. And we'll talk about neurology in a moment, but to be consistent, right? Like for example, if you want to go running, to even like in the morning, put your shoes on. Even if you have that step, you're building that pathway again and again, right? So that eventually you'll go running all the time, right? So it's about being consistent. And one thing that helps there is to measure something, right? Because when you make your habits visible, you also get that little dopamine reward that says, cool, you're doing it, look, right? And using a habit tracker or using some tool like that, where you can check off every day, like, look, I did this today, right? It gives you that little reward. And that's really has to do with the neuroscience of habit formation. Right? Because every time we do something new or something difficult or something different, we're going to get this push of adrenaline, right, that comes up. And it's like, oh, alert, right? A little stressed even, right? But in a positive stress way, hopefully, right? But you get that little adrenaline kick, right? And then in that moment when you say, oh, I'm doing it, keep going, right? Then you get a release of dopamine, right? It's that thing that like keeps you going, which is what social media abuses when they have these little indicators and, oh, somebody liked my stuff, you get a little dopamine kick, so you want to spend more time on that social media, right? But like dopamine is that thing that makes you like, oh, cool, this is cool, keep going. Because what then happens is acetylcholine starts allowing to form new markers where this new pathway might be. And then when you celebrate and rest and you get serotonin, your brain actually connects these markers into new pathways. So that's also why it's really key to make sure that you have times to rest and you really celebrate what you did. Because otherwise you're going to build those markers, but they're going to go away again. right? So it's really important that you could get rest and that you celebrate your new doing afterwards, right? Because that then creates a new synapses in your brain. And as you're learning to adopt habits and you're like, cool, I can actually do that. I can build habits. I can do that. At some point, you're going to realize that I can really create myself. I'm not defined. You know, I mean, there's certain definitions. I have certain genes and things that are a little bit more difficult to change, but even those can be changed on that note. But if you look at the work of Bruce Lipton, for example, he's talking about the epigenetics and how we can shift our genes even. But we're a laboratory, right? We're this little chemical lab, and we can really continuously evolve ourselves, right? Starting and acknowledging that that's a process, right? Where we have continuously increasing awareness, and then we take responsibility for what we become aware of. And if we do that, then we're in the sweet spot of ownership. If we become aware of new things and we don't take responsibility, we're playing small, we're depressing some part of us that wants to evolve. Right? And many of us have this experience at the moment, even, and it's not surprising that in the last couple of decades, depression has gone up, right? Because we're beginning to see that our world as it is not quite working the way it is anymore, right? But we don't know how to take responsibility for it necessarily yet, right? We might not know. But if we don't, we're going to keep depressing and eventually become depressed. Right? It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater, and eventually you're going to get really tired and don't even want to be here anymore. On the other side, if we take a lot of new responsibility on without shifting who we are, without shifting our mindset, without shifting our awareness, we're going to burn out. But if you think about the events of last year, there's been a lot of new responsibilities that people suddenly take on. And if you don't also change who you are, you're going to eventually not have the resources anymore to do this. Right? So the key is that you always want to sort of be in this constant movement towards a new aspirational self. Right? When something changes, you either take more responsibility or become aware of new things. But you then also say, okay, cool. How do I get back into an ownership? But who would I have to be that next level and version of myself? Right? And so you're constantly creating yourself. You're actually continuously cultivating the experience of you. And as you're doing that, you're creating ripples, right? Because you're now showing up differently, and it's going to affect everything and everybody around you, right? Because culture is really this emergent phenomenon, right? Of like where we sort of this interference pattern of different ripples, right? And in that in-between space, that's where culture forms. And pardon the sirens, I live on urban streets, very urban, and a lot of excitement here sometimes. But right, this is why we do this, so we can create a different culture, so we can ultimately create the kind of culture we would want on this planet. But if you want to create the future, it all starts with creating yourself. So that was a little intro from how do I move from self-care to actually cultivating myself and creating myself.
Thank you, Philip. And at Lumen, we work primarily inside organizations. So can you help me understand, like, as a manager, as a leader, why this is important for inside of organizations, not just for individuals?
Absolutely. Well, then the first part is that stress is rampant. Right? And if you look at the cost of stress, it's ginormous. It's essentially from sick days to absenteeism to presenteeism, where I'm just showing up and I'm not really there. Right? If people don't know how to manage stress, they're not going to be doing good work either. Right? And for example, once I worry, right, literally my blood goes into my arms and my legs, so I can have a fight or flight response, but it's not in my brain, so it doesn't make for very good thinking. Right? So there's a direct cost of actual, like, if you look at the healthcare cost and mental health cost that's out there, there's some really beautiful statistics you can find of how, I think in the UK it's like $50 billion or something like this, insane amount of numbers of what actually is the cost of people not taking care of themselves. Right? So there's that direct financial cost, and it's simply the performance too. Right? And if I have people that are not just knowing how to take care of themselves, but are actually cultivating themselves, are actually at that place where they're increasing their own performance and increasing how they're showing up every day, why wouldn't you want that, right? That's actually, you're going to get more performance out of your people. And how, coming back to those ripples, if individuals start showing up differently, they're also affecting the culture of the organization.
Then as you were going through the awareness, responsibility, ownership graph, I was really conscious of how this year has created all of these new stressors. And so that as a leader and as an individual, I suddenly have all these new responsibilities that are creating a certain amount of burnout. that actually like has me unable also to incorporate my new levels of awareness. And so there's this crazy burnout and playing small interplay that is happening for, I think, I'm sure this is true for a lot of people right now, and especially working mothers who have all of this new responsibility and are like struggling to who they need to be to incorporate these new forms of their life. And at the same time, the awareness of perhaps who they could be as different possibilities have come on board with our new ways of virtual working. And so there's just this fantastic moment where we're like both burned out and playing small. And I was like watching, I was like,
Observation.
oh, dang, I'm doing both those things. No wonder this moment hurts.
Right? Because you're trying to get back to a place where you feel like things you're doing it, right? And if you're like stretched over here and you're stretched over there, and you're right, especially women right now, because of we're still in this chauvinistic, mindset that somehow a woman takes care of her children and the man can do his work, right? And when he's on a call, mommy has to take care of the kids, kind of thing. So that's still happening. So yeah, they're doing double, triple duty sometimes right now, right? And as you said, stretching in both directions, and where you even don't even see like how could you possibly take care of yourself in this, right? If you don't even have 2 minutes to do things, where does the self-care come in, right? There's a beautiful Zen saying that says, if you think you don't have time to meditate for 10 minutes, you should probably meditate for an hour. And it's a little bit like that. It's really also, it's an empowering thing to actually say, you know what, I'm going to take these 5 minutes for me. And to take those 5 minutes for you, and it doesn't have to be 2 hours, right? If you think about morning rituals or evening rituals, right? If I had my wishes, I'd spend 2 hours with my morning ritual every day. Reality is sometimes it's 5 minutes, right? Because it's all I have, right? But to at least acknowledge yourself, at least acknowledge I have needs, right? And also to open that conversation, like for example, with your partner, to say, hey, buddy, by the way, I have needs, right? I need a certain time for myself. I need a certain thing, and make requests of people to enroll other people in supporting you in that. Right? And I think we can always negotiate that, even with your boss or a manager or whatever it might be, to go out and say, hey, I'm going to need this 1 hour a week. And if I have that 1 hour a week, I'm going to actually be better and perform better. So you're only winning if I do that, right? And to learn to actually know that you're that important, right? Because if you're not paying attention to yourself, who is? Right? We don't have mommy and daddy anymore taking care of us necessarily. We get to do that for ourselves now, right? And really stand up for ourselves and stand up for our needs.
And I think as we are really if we choose to move into that place of self-cultivation, of having a clear vision of who we want to be as a leader, and then take the time to ask, who do I need to be in order to be that leader? These aspects of self-care really do come online. Like I'm spending a lot of time right now with individuals. Just in the nature of the ebb and flow of our work is that right now I have a lot of one-on-one time, and that highly personal one-on-one time requires different things of me than group work or solo work does. It's less creative. It requires more stillness, and I recognized that I had wandered away from my meditation habit. Just happened.
Interesting. Okay.
And found myself on my cushion this morning for the first time in I'm not sure how long, but my Muse app does.
Awesome.
And and it was just
That's why it's good to
amazing.
measure.
Like, I tried to look anyway. I went to look back, and it was like it doesn't matter this morning. But I noticed even just as I settled down onto my seat, which is a really specific place, how just a whole new set of who I am and who I can be just like instantly came online. Just the instant my spine fell into alignment. And as we are in these times that are asking us to really truly evolve who we are as leaders, I really would turn the question over to our audience of who are you becoming, and what is the self-cultivation that is required of you to become that person.
Really to begin to help, take care of yourself, really to start there at least, even if you don't at the cultivation place yet, but even to start with the basics, right?
Right. Yeah. The very fundamentals. I think when we're on these Zoom calls all day long, it becomes very easy to get to the end of the day and realize you haven't moved or had water or eaten a meal at a table. And coming back to real fundamentals is vital if we're going to run this marathon through to the end. And while many of us are learning that there's an element of remote work that we love, finding a way to make that truly sustainable, and not just sustainable, but actually cultivating, joyous, a way that you can be the leader you want to be from whatever desk you're sitting at.
Beautifully said.
Yeah. Anything more you want to add to that, Philip, before we close it out?
I think, I just sound under danger of sounding like a broken record. Take care of yourself, please, especially if you're taking care of other people. I mean, you were talking about the one-on-one, or if you have children, or, if you're managing a team, if you're taking care of other people, start with taking care of yourself. It seems oxymoronic in a way, like in the sense of, putting out, right? But in order to have the energy to actually take care of other people, you need to also feed yourself. Right? And so start there. That's really the point. Is like, we can't necessarily influence our environment, but we can influence what our set point is with which we're meeting that environment.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Philip. It's always a pleasure to have time with you, and we'll schedule another one of these so we actually get to see each other. And
I look forward to it.
Thanks
Back to
everyone
physical
for
need
joining
of
us.
touch, right?
Yeah.
All right. Have a
Next
great
time
one.
live. All right. Take care, everyone.
Okay.
Bye.
Great.